name is Ben Cox and I'm Head of Digital Health at Team. I've worked at Team for around 12 years now across a range of projects in drug delivery, diagnostics, surgical and medtech. Prior to working at Team, I was in other product development consultancy roles, and I've also spent some time working as a clinical scientist in the National Health Service. I'm going to talk today about bridging physical and digital. It's a reality that medical devices are increasingly becoming phygital, where a physical product has an association with a digital component. To explore this topic further, I'm going to break this talk into 3 sections. Firstly, to define phygital user experiences and the benefits of digital and connectivity. Then to identify best practices in UX design. And finally, present a use case example to explore best practices when designing a user interface that requires interplay between physical and digital components. So what do we mean when we talk about phygital user experience? Phygital, or physical plus digital, is really a marketing term that describes blending digital experiences with physical ones. You see this all around from driving cars to shopping. But I think it's a useful term to frame the reality of many medical products and systems today. Patients and healthcare professionals are increasingly interacting with multiple physical and digital touchpoints and channels. For example, we're even seeing social media being used as patient engagement platforms. And the blending of these digital experiences with physical ones is on the rise due to multiple value drivers. The first value driver is to realize the benefits of data and connectivity. These benefits are many and varied, and this is really at the crux of digital health. Just one example here is a project we worked on with BestPack by Recipharm to demonstrate the value of adding connectivity to one of their auto-injector platforms. In this case, we developed a connected module to fit inside the rear cab of the device, along with an iOS application, cloud database and web portal as a connected demonstrator system. The system would allow collection of valuable data and insight from users and encourage patient adherence by providing a considered and supportive user experience. From a design perspective, we wanted to embody connectivity in a way that would be flexible in its usage and minimally invasive to the existing device functionality, and importantly, not add burden for the user. Secondly, bridging physical and digital provides opportunities to aid interaction and allow users to perform tasks more quickly and efficiently. We can see this in the form of embedded digital user interfaces that guide users through the use of a device, such as the diagnostic platform that I'm going to cover later in this talk. Or in the case shown here, where the Timpa Health platform has been able to disrupt the hearing health pathway by leveraging smartphone technology to offer a comprehensive hearing health assessment via the use of a smart otoscope in a single patient visit. We also see the use of digital to improve onboarding for physical medical devices. Whether this is via smart packaging, smart labels, or a QR code on a device to access a website or native app to onboard a patient to a new therapy. Here we see an example of a QR code printed on a device that acts as a gateway to a digital destination to enhance the experience for new users. Part of the onboarding experience is often about training and education, which leads me to the next driver. That is to improve patient support and education. Patient education has been shown in randomized controlled trials to be one of the most effective interventions for improving behaviour and adherence, and digital tools often offer many ways to enhance this. This is an example we've worked on for type 1 diabetes, bringing together highly considered print media with a digital companion. We created a printed report which displayed key parameters to help patients understand how well they were managing their condition in an easy-to-digest format. Alongside this, we developed features for a companion app, providing an additional level of information and dynamic results history. This combined physical and digital experience has the potential to help educate, prompt, and motivate behaviour change when needed. Finally, for this part of the talk, another key driver for Phygital is keeping users engaged. Of course, this is where digital shines in our day-to-day, and you can read many books on this topic. The example here is a digital health solution we've worked on to empower stroke survivors by enabling a greater degree of control over their own rehabilitation. In this case, we used the COM-B model to help define several behavioural interventions to aid stroke recovery, which were combined over multiple iterations into a single digital health solution via an app. I'll come on to talk about some of these tactics in the next part of this talk. So it's clear that the landscape for physical and digital experiences is rapidly expanding, and we've touched on some of the key drivers for this. I'll now turn to best practices in user experience design. So let's take a step back for a moment and consider the design of digital products. I've borrowed a couple of definitions from Google here. Digital products are any kind of software-enabled tool. They use pixels and code to deliver some kind of functional value to the end user. They make something useful happen. And another, a digital product is a software-enabled product or service that offers some form of utility to a human being. Note the words useful and utility. At the end of the day, the solutions we work on must add value. We should also note that these products can be any kind of software-enabled tool, so we're not just talking about smartphone apps. So it's not surprising that we're seeing software-driven innovations in health tech. As we work on more digital products, it's important to acknowledge how they're different to more traditional medical devices in terms of design and development. They both share fundamental principles related to safety, efficacy, and regulatory compliance, but there are key differences in design considerations and development processes. Firstly, digital products of course involve software components, so there are typically considerations for user interfaces, data processing and data storage, and connectivity. We need to be thinking about software development cycles, continuous updates, and considerations for interoperability with other healthcare systems. Then there's the regulatory compliance. The regulatory landscape for software and digital health is evolving all of the time, so as designers we must ensure compliance with current regulations addressing software requirements, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and privacy. Digital products also require thoughtful user experience and user interface design, which I'll get onto in a minute. We also need to consider factors like usability and accessibility. And human factors engineering is still crucial from a risk perspective, but may require new approaches. Prototyping may involve both hardware and software components, and testing may include interoperability and cybersecurity assessments. And finally, lifecycle management, ongoing software updates, cybersecurity monitoring, and adapting to evolving technologies and standards. So in developing digital products, how do we maximize our chance of success? I believe we should think about what makes a product meaningful. Meaningful products are those that somehow resonate with people's needs and match their values, so we must work hard to understand the end user. When developing digital products, we should think about products that are culturally relevant, products that match the needs and aspirations of groups of people, inspiring them to do better. We should think about products that remove barriers and provide lasting value, rather than being a forgettable short-term fix. And products that are trustworthy. The opportunities for digital products are clear, but their potential can only be fully realized if they're developed with end users in mind. Another way to look at this is to focus on user value. What's the problem we're trying to solve? And there could be multiple problems. Is the solution based on some real evidence or user insight? And what's the desired outcome? For a successful and meaningful digital product, it doesn't matter how well designed and pixel perfect it is, if it fails to offer some real tangible user value. In order to tackle these questions, there are a number of user experience methodologies and tools that we can use to understand users and workflows. User experience is a methodology that starts with researchers immersing themselves in the world of the user of a product, service, or system to understand what they do and how and why they do it. It involves putting users at the center of the design and development process and establishing an iterative cycle of research, design, and evaluation. It's important to capture and understand all the critical needs of users, to make informed design decisions based on user-derived evidence, not opinion, to know your users and get them involved as early as possible, and to establish a cycle of research, design, and evaluation, and of course iterate. So starting with understanding the user, we can conduct user interviews, market research, and desk-based research to form a view of the user or patient in the form of a documented persona. These artifacts become important tools throughout the design process that help us to stay focused on solving key user problems and to retain empathy for real people with real needs. We can also apply behaviour design activities to inform our UX strategy. These activities begin with research and journey mapping to identify target behaviours that are relevant towards achieving the desired outcomes. We then analyse the contributing promoters and barriers of these behaviours by applying the behaviour science models to ensure a comprehensive approach. Prioritised target behaviours then guide the selection of evidence-based principles and techniques that can be translated into a UX strategy or guidelines and features. I'll provide some examples later on. It's important to note that behaviour design goes beyond concept generation. It's also embedded in design choices that make up the UX design, the user journeys, and the user interface design. For example, language, colour selection, information design, calls to action, iconography, and many other elements play nuanced roles in shaping user interactions and attitudes. So I mentioned journey and experience mapping. Experience mapping helps us to see how a user interacts with a product, system, or service over a period of time. These maps, like personas, keep us focused on user needs and challenges they may be experiencing. They're a great way to reduce a lot of complexity down to something that's immediately digestible and visually engaging. They become the backbone of many of our design projects and help everyone to stay focused on building the right thing. Of course, systems combining physical and digital components are often complex. Service design techniques help to visualize the relationship between multiple actors and system components. We can map the actors and data flows to help uncover blockers, potential data mismatches, and to clearly identify which actors or systems might be involved. So we've learned a little about UX as a methodology and how to unpack the problem space. But what comes next? We need to get users accustomed to a new product, and there are a number of key considerations. We need to make it simple to get started, so effective onboarding as part of a patient journey. Using the stroke recovery solution I mentioned earlier as an example, a rehab plan would have been created as part of the patient's electronic health record. The patient could simply be given a letter with a QR code or be sent a secure link and a separate secure code to enter. Either method would lead to an app download. The link to the App Store has carried a secure token along with the download link. When the user opens the app, they're automatically authenticated and can view their rehab plan. This illustrates how to reduce the number of potential barriers during onboarding and how it's possible to provide a tailored digital destination. Then for a connected device, removing the strain of pairing. When connecting via Bluetooth, it should be easy, no passwords, no codes, and this is achievable using beacon technologies. Connecting to Wi-Fi networks can be problematic and complicated. Nest and Sonos have notably good Wi-Fi connection experiences, and we've learned from those systems when designing Wi-Fi provisioning flows for connected devices. So we can learn a lot from the consumer electronics world and challenge ourselves to do better, whilst recognising the specific design considerations and development processes for medical devices. Then data sharing and privacy. Apple has famously turned privacy into a business advantage, and for good reason. People are more privacy aware these days, so it's important, especially in the US where data privacy laws are less mature, to ensure users feel safe and secure when using your products and services. Assuming we've developed the software appropriately, from a user's perspective, the use of reassuring words and symbols can be used to reinforce security and privacy. And when we're thinking about making the best start, the way in which you communicate with patients and provide support matters a lot. If you think back to the Phygital ecosystem we showed earlier, and the various touchpoints and channels, when designing an experience for patients, you need to consider the full picture, and that includes communications they send and receive. We should seek to leverage channels via printed and digital media to support and educate new users. So you've made a good start and welcomed your users. How do you then keep them engaged? There are many commonly used tools we can learn from, but not all are relevant within our industry. Some of the techniques shown here are called persuasive patterns. Alongside other methods of behavioural influence, these are why the social media platforms we all know work so well. Providing frictionless interaction, high variability in content, social proof and inclusion are examples of key principles we can use in the design of our products. So we can share how we applied some of these in the design of the stroke recovery solution. We factored in several elements at once with this app aiming to engage and retain users, starting with welcoming prompts to reduce friction. The use of warm and friendly graphic design helps people feel at ease. The primary action, next, gives users a simple decision point. Then the day's schedule is clearly laid out so users know what to expect from their day. Personalized content, tasks, and addressing people by name are powerful tools for engagement. So the design here provides each user with a rehabilitation plan created specifically for them. This helps them to feel valued. Also, just simply using their name when appropriate is an easy but impactful way to make a service feel more personal. We could even go further by letting patients tailor or add their own exercises, within limits of course, to help them feel they have true ownership of their recovery. People are more likely to keep coming back when they feel rewarded, so we can tap into primal instincts by providing experiences that users continue to find rewarding. For example, in this case we thought about social support and validation. Achieving goals together boosts confidence and adherence. This is related to social proof and how we feel secure when acting as part of a group. Social networks leverage this, as do e-commerce stores, by showing people what others are doing or buying. You generally feel safer when you do things that others have already done, and feel better able to complete activities when others join in with you. So to wrap up this middle section on UX design, I just want to share the design tools we use and how we go about evaluating user experience. Increasingly, we're using two main tools to simplify the UX design workflow. As a consultancy, it's very important for us to work in a highly collaborative manner. I'm sure many of you will have come across Miro and Figma. Miro is online whiteboarding at its best, and we use this all of the time between ourselves at team and with clients. We use it for collating evidence, running ideation workshops, and exploring design challenges in a broad and open way. This is especially important when working with digital components, as the process can be more free-flowing. We then start to transition into Figma. Again, this is a highly collaborative design tool that allows us to start simply and build complexity as we go. Figma supports with the full design workflow, from mapping user journeys, creating wireframes, building a UI, and creating clickable prototypes. These tools keep evolving, and managing everything in one workflow is really helpful. And whilst we can get to a certain level of clickable prototypes with Figma, tools like Protopie help us to get much closer to a real simulation of the final product. Access to device hardware such as accelerometers, cameras, microphones and more gives us a much richer and realistic experience to test with end users. When we have a prototype ready, we put it in the hands of real people. At Team, we have decades of experience with human factors engineering. We've conducted over 8,000 in-person interviews around the world with representative users. In this example, we've invited stroke patients to take part in an early formative study where they could interact with a prototype and give us their opinions on how it felt and its relevance to them, along with observing whether they could complete various tasks without any major usability issues. At Team, we also conduct remote user testing, and this was accelerated during the pandemic. Taking this approach gives us global access to patients and healthcare professionals for moderated and unmoderated user testing. Using a combination of video conferencing platforms and prototyping tools, it makes it easy for us to reach participants and to see them in their own environment. This has the benefit of helping them feel relaxed. It also allows us to recruit more quickly and at a lower cost, and we can ask participants questions about their environment and how it affects their interaction with medical products. For digital products, we're starting to see more use cases for unmoderated remote testing that helps design teams to test rapidly and efficiently. It's not so common in developing medical products, but it is gaining traction. Just to emphasize that in-person simulated use testing is still the gold standard, especially for HF validation, but these other approaches can be incredibly useful, especially at the early stages of the design process. So that brings us to the final part of the talk today. I'm going to focus on a recent case study where we had to quite literally combine physical and digital components. So this is the connected point-of-care diagnostics platform we worked on with a company called Lumira DX. The challenge was to develop a portable point-of-care diagnostics platform which could run multiple assays using microfluidic consumables. The instrument also had to deliver an outstanding user experience along with secure cloud connectivity to electronic health records. After identifying and prioritizing use cases with our client, we began by exploring the context of use across 3 markets. We went into different settings, including hospitals, clinics, pharmacies, and gained really valuable insights, such as the one you can see here, where we can see constraints on connectivity with device literally plugged in to the wall via an Ethernet cable. We then assessed existing solutions to identify usability issues and to understand UI conventions, common workflows, and behaviors. We then translated the research, allowing us to map out the system, including different actors, interactions, and data flows. The user interface for this product guides the user through various workflows, and we wanted it to remain the same regardless of the test that was being used and the setting, whether it was for an emergency room or as part of an everyday diagnostic test. We know that connectivity is sometimes a challenge in today's hospital and healthcare settings, so we designed for specific use cases to ensure the system and its users could benefit from two-way cloud connectivity without being reliant on it, so testing is always possible at the point of care. And our cross-functional team of designers and developers collaborated right from the project outset to explore technical feasibility and ergonomic considerations. So that case study from Lumira DX is just one example, but we've also tackled many other projects ranging from device connectivity, like the project you can see here with BestPack, to developing digital materials to providing on-market patient support for drug delivery devices. So that brings us to the end of the talk today. We've explored Phygital user experiences and the benefits of digital and connectivity. We've looked at best practices in user experience design and shared some recent project examples showing how to bring physical and digital together in development. Thanks for listening.
The first question that we've received is, what has been your most interesting project when it comes to the Phygital experience?
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Chris. So most interesting project has probably been the Lumira DX project that was mentioned earlier, because it was designing and developing a point of care diagnostic. Right from the offset, we needed to understand the kind of most challenging environments of use, which kind of led into lots of questions about like the system itself, and it was a very like complex need to understand. And you can see that having understood the kind of most complex use cases, like in hospitals, it made it much easier for environments outside hospitals to be viable. So we've seen this product be very successful in Boots stores. Lumira got it into Boots, and it's been a very successful product. More recently, we've worked on a range of digital training and support solutions for medical devices, which go far beyond the traditional approach of what would be deemed as safe and effective IFUs. Like, if we're all honest, in the medical industry, we know that instructions for use have limitations, the paper ones especially. What's interesting in that space is that regulators really haven't caught up with that very quickly, and almost like legislate against you producing like digital IFUs. So it's a space where the regulators need to maybe kind of work on their approach to it. But thankfully, there are companies that speak to the regulators. Like, lots of the big pharmas talk to regulators on a regular basis and try and push this move towards digital. Yeah, it's quite common. Okay.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Chris. So another question we've had is, what do you think the trends are for digital components, for example, mobile apps?
Okay, so there's probably three topics: personalization, digital biomarkers, and everybody's favorite buzzword, AI. But I can talk a bit about the applications of AI, a bit more specifically in medical. So when we talk about personalization, like the obvious one is it needs to be personalized to a patient's treatment plan. Like, treatment plans are often like highly specific for a patient, except I think in the past, digital products for patients might have been a bit more generic. Let's say if it's just like video guidance or something like that, it's always generic by default. Whereas I think better products, we've seen things in like the rehab space, for example, where they can scan what the patient is doing and they'll present a personalized plan to them that a physiotherapist has created. Like these are great. These are really good like efforts going towards personalization. But even something as simple as saying like hi Mike, just when you present an app to a user, it can be like surprisingly powerful. Rather than saying hi Mr. Smith or something like that. Or just Mr. Smith, here's your record, here's your record. Measuring digital biomarkers is big business. There's a lot of wearable diagnostics out there now. Or the diagnostics can come straight from your phone, so fall monitoring and things like that can come straight from the phone. Digital therapeutics face challenges in this with like reimbursement pathways and reach with HCPs, but wearable therapeutics is a growing space. So there are almost always digital components to these, either to control or relay status of the therapeutic. And there might also be a diagnostic tied into that as well. So it's kind of like a whole ecosystem. Closed loop insulin pump systems are an example of that, but there are lots more, and it's an exciting growing space. AI, obviously, a big buzzword. There's been a cautious approach in medicine for many very good reasons, and it should continue that way. However, what's good is that big companies like AstraZeneca are already working with the FDA on approval pathways for AI products, because approval pathways for digital products were somewhat emergent anyway. And if they think AI adds a lot of complexity on top of that. So thankfully, people are already working with the right regulators in the right way. Obviously, the FDA is the right regulator to work with. They're a bit more stable than maybe regulations in Europe at the moment. And lastly, with like AI, in silico clinical trials are a kind of like emergent space where you kind of need AI or these massive neural nets to process this kind of data, and combining difficult to analyze biomarkers as well. So you could have a whole host of different biomarkers. It's very difficult to analyze them by themselves, or for an HCP just to look at all these different biomarkers and make a decision. So AIs can be used to sift through the data and present like the most salient data. There's lots of examples of that now.